Hello, everybody. My name is Nikki Simrod, and I want to tell you how delighted I am to welcome you on behalf of Hill Center, our board, and our staff, and everyone who has anything to do with this place this evening. What can only be described as a joyous occasion for Katy Didden, her family and friends, for the National Capital Bank family and friends, and really for us at Hill Center, because we consider it a huge privilege to be hosting the celebration of a first poetry book by an extraordinary young poet. And of course, not just any poet. This poet and her family have deep, deep roots in this community. And really, we'd like to claim you as one of our own, Katy. Can we do that? Great. It's also of very special significance to us tonight to be all of us involved in the rehabilitation of the Old Naval Hospital, to be here at this gathering in the Lincoln Hall. The Abraham Lincoln Hall is the largest public room in this building, and the restoration of this lovely room was underwritten by a generous contribution by the National Capital Bank in honor and memory of George Didden III, Katy's father. Tonight, George would be very proud. Let me offer sincere appreciation again to the National Capital Bank for its exquisite support for the restoration of this building and for all the other things you do in the community, Richard and Kathy and all of you and Andy. You'll be really pleased to know that this building is so busy that thousands of people come in here every month, and it's growing every single day. There are such a huge, wide, and stimulating range of programs going on in here, and I hope that all of you here will come back again. And if you just give us your email, and that's easy to do by just signing up in down in our reception office, you will get a wonderful e-blast every Wednesday afternoon to tell you what's going on. So I could tell you a lot about the history of this building, but I think what I'd like to do is just move right on to our program and talk to any of you afterwards who would like to discuss it, because we're excited about this restoration. It came about as a result of a huge community effort on the part of hundreds of people, many organizations, the U.S. Congress, the District of Columbia, National Trust for Historic Preservation, and it's been a wonderful effort. We're proud of it. We're so happy to be here tonight. And I'd like to introduce Tarfia Fezula, also a poet, who's the author of the book Seam, forthcoming from the Crab Orchard Review Poetry Series. So Tarfia, may I ask you to come up to introduce Katy?
Hi. In his essay, The Poet's Business, Theodore Roethke writes that the eye, of course, is not enough, but the outer eye serves the inner. That's the point. One of the many reasons that Katy's work is so compelling is not just the keenness of her eye, but the delicacy with which her inner and outer gazes are not just balanced, but in fact are superimposed over each other. I'm glad there's somewhere we can't wreck, Katy writes in Mind's Eye Island, and the plainness with which she delivers such an astonishing revelation speaks to how beautifully the inner and outer gazes are layered in her poems. We are reminded that seemingly inanimate objects, such as glaciers and sycamores, are not only worthy of our attention, but also teach us about the physics of both our souls and our bodies. The speakers in Katy's poems consider how both irrevocable and malleable the language around grief and love must be. But most importantly, Katy's poems never merely render. They always impress me with their careful construction and attention to craft. The precision of Katy's line breaks alone make me want to swoon, not to mention her beautiful rhetorical turns and seemingly effortless metrical movements. These are just a few of the many reasons Katy is such a powerful and necessary poet, one that is here to stay. Katy Didden is the author of The Glaciers Wake, which won the Lena Miles Weaver Todd Prize from Pleiades Press and is now available for purchase outside as well. Her poems and reviews appear in journals such as Bat City Review, the Kenyon Review, the Missouri Review, Smartish Pace, Poetry, and the Best New Poets Anthology. She is the recipient of the Beulah Rose Prize from Smartish Pace, 3 Dorothy Sargent Awards, and an Academy American Poets Prize. She has also received scholarships and residencies from the Breadloaf Writers Conference, the Vermont Studio Center, the Virginia Center for Creative Arts, and the Hambridge Center. She is currently a postdoctoral fellow at St. Louis University, and she co-curates the Observable Reading Series with the poet Ricky Laurentis, who's also an amazing poet, for the St. Louis Poetry Center. Next year, most excitingly, she will be a Hodder Fellow at Princeton University, and we're so excited for her. Please join me in welcoming Katy Didden.
Thank you. Wow, well, so great to see everybody here. It's a little overwhelming also. I want to first thank Nikki Simrat for, I'm not sure where she is right now. Oh, right here. I wanted to thank you because when I initially thought about doing a book launch and we thought of the Hill Center, you've been so supportive this whole time and really made this easy, and it just means so much for me to be able to read here, and I just can't thank you enough for making that happen and for being so welcoming. I'd also really like to thank Tarfia for that introduction, and I met Tarfia when I was poetry editor at the Missouri Review, and we published several of her poems, and she wrote about her experience on Fulbright in Bangladesh, and her first book just won the Crab Orchard Review Prize and will be published soon, so I encourage everyone to be on the lookout for that. It's titled Seam. It's outstanding, and I'm so honored that she introduced me tonight, so thank you so much. I'd like to thank the Hill Center for letting us use this space and for also being so organized. As many of you know, the Capitol Hill community is very important to my family, and in particular, I know my father would have been thrilled to see the Hill Center thriving like this, and it means a great deal to me to have the reading in this room that was sponsored by NCB. And I feel like my father would have really enjoyed the fact that I'm reading here tonight, so it means a lot to me. So many of the poems in my book are my attempts to make sense of losing my dad, but I also really feel his legacy lives on in the Capitol Hill community, and so I'm very happy to be here, reading here. It's all about thank yous. That's all I'm doing is gonna be reading things. I'd like to thank all my friends and family for being here, and you often hear with famous poets that they've had terrible childhoods and that, they're using poetry to make sense out of the chaos of their lives, and that's why they're so famous, but that's really not my story at all. The only chaos I have is all my own, and so I have the most supportive family in the world, and I know the book wouldn't exist without all of their love and encouragement. Not just even my immediate family, but I have a huge extended family, and I'm sure you'll see that if you talk to anyone tonight. We have a wonderful family here. And I'd especially like to thank my mother. I sent my manuscript out for 2 years trying to get it published to all these different contests. And it came close so many times, and I would call and say, oh, it was a finalist, or it didn't get taken. And then when I heard that I'd won the Lena Miles Weaver Todd Prize, I called my mom. She was the first person I called, and she just said, whoa, 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 whoa. It was like, for a full 5 minutes of just complete joy, and her celebrating hasn't stopped since. And I've never met anyone in general who celebrates life as well as my mom does, and I owe everything to the fact that she believes in me. And so I want to thank you, Mom, for turning this book launch into a bona fide party, which is also But we're going to have, so after I read some poems, I hope you'll all stay because we have a nice reception here in the room just across the hallway there. So on to the poems, okay. I love to travel, and a lot of the poems in this book come from my travels to places like Patagonia or Death Valley. And the first few I'll read come from those experiences. So let's see my set list. I feel like a rock star here. Okay. The first one is, it's called Before Edison Invented Lights. Before Edison invented lights, if you stood outside at night at a moonless hour, you could mark your place in the universe by how you fit among the field of stars. The world was colder then, and the distances between one family and another were bigger by an exponent, which meant people traveled more if they didn't go as far. Anyone who watches a bird flying, a small bird especially, and sees it rise in full flight like a voice shifting octaves, knows that you can get anywhere if you only imagine the connecting line between where you are and where you'd like to go. A stone on a stone makes a wall. An arch in a tower holds a bell. The air in the bell catches sound, and the wind carries it over the lake where it fills the white sail. You navigate by stars. Between the stars are more stars you can't see, and between all stars is a dark silence and the great pull we only understand as longing, to which we're tuned like bells, over which our eyes draw lines between the bright places. We give the blackness shapes with names of gods. In a fist-sized glass dome, in a vacuum atmosphere not unlike the universe, Edison, after many trials, suspended a filament of straight bamboo, whittled down to its threads, then charred by heat until it resembled the stuff of stars. It burned for 600 hours, and the ceilings of our dreams lost their dim flickerings to the steady glow of incandescence. And now whole cities shine up like planets, and most stars, to our eyes, have gone out. Unless you travel. In the North Cascades, on a ridge overlooking a white volcano, the only thing darker than the night is the gliding shadow of a great owl. When you sleep with your face to the sky, the stars are not so much above as around you. Stare long enough and you begin to feel you could lift your body off the earth and hover in the black night on the web of your awe at 1 billion suns towards which everything you're made of yearns. Great, those are great sound effects. Okay. Thanks. Okay. I think I'll read this next one, which is actually an older poem, and I'm going to read it. This is a poem I wrote, I think, just before I went to visit my cousin TJ, and he's here in the audience tonight. So he lives in Albuquerque, and this was on a road trip. We went to the Abiquiu Pueblo, which is where Georgia O'Keeffe used to live and work. And on the Pueblo, they have the penitentes, which were this, I think, a monastic order that would follow the rites of Good Friday and do these elaborate parades. And this is one of their houses called the Penitentes Morada, Abiquiu Pueblo. Building with 3 waist-high windows, their shutters locked from the outside. Small latches, those Ulysses bonds that hold the monks back, though the desert surges forward with its heat and infiltrates the shutter cracks with light. As if those muted beams were all they could withstand. The way the body, always seeking oblivion, feels light's tug, would step out the adobe walls and, reeling from the spectrum, sink into sand. Were the monks inside, their minds were holy sky. No cage exists without its opposite. The mind is always elsewhere, won't stay put. Whose merciful hands, then, could bind us to our longing? Okay. Maybe you could just, snap in between poetry here. Okay, but thank you very much. Okay. So throughout the reading, I'll also read what I call these double persona poems. So I'm writing in the voice of non-human creatures and features, and I'm sort of anthropomorphizing these creatures and features by assigning each of them a human profession. So you'll hear from a wasp who is also an art historian, and a glacier who's a former starlet, and a sycamore who's also a minister. And I used a different form for each voice. So I want to read a couple of those now. The first one is the sycamore on praise. So this is the sycamore who's also a minister. The sycamore, I don't know if there's one outside to look at. It seems like almost the trees out there are tall as sycamores. The sycamore on praise. A way to stay put is to feel earth tilting, to know its vast surface curves, that the sky's brightening is not the sun flattering you with its attention, just the speed at which you're spinning west. You're a speck. You aren't meant to last. Seeing death everywhere, you can choose despair. Blunt your roots on rocks, accuse the cold wind as it lashes your limbs, then train your shape to the synonym for whip. You can rip the sky to skim water. Or you can watch yourself change, marvel how death models you with strange spots, wrinkles your skin and plumps your veins. In the shade, you can love what repeats, branched river and snake tracks in the leaf, the fruit dangling like suspended suns, the years cycling, the slant-rhymed seasons, or the heron like a gray beacon on the same high limb each afternoon. Our daily habits, hearing a tune in thunder, words in the shaking leaves. Praise the stuttering flow of light off waves. Praise the linking wind, the sudden rain's promise that what was will be again. Praise lush soil, praise infinite patterns of which you're made, to which you will return. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and this next one we'll hear from the glacier, the former starlet. The glacier on lack of sleep. When day comes, the light's too bright. A yawn forms behind the spires of your eyes. Your jaw cracks, splits a crevasse. Little parts of you collapse. If you were older or cared less about being seen, you would lie down in public. Okay, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and this next one is, a lot of the poems are love poems or failed love poems, and this is one of those. This is Unloved, a Debate with Three Fins. They taught me to speak with the middle third of my lips, as if I'd sucked a lemon, or as if my mouth were frozen slightly open. After good morning, nice to meet you, and where is the sauna, I asked them how to say I love you. At this, they murmured to each other. Then Satu, the most outspoken of the three, who often said things that were slightly shocking, said she didn't know how to translate love exactly. In English, she said, you use the word too lightly. You say, I love you to your mother, your friend, and your lover, to a lover you only slightly more than like, to a lover you hope will never leave you. How do you ever know, she wondered, which love your lover means? At first, I thought it was a question of degree. I measured I love yous by the way my lover looked at me. The context mattered. Love was true, since love shifts intensity, since any lover is both friend and mother sometimes. But then she said the word for love Finns rarely say. They speak it to one person only, or at most to very few. My friends grew serious, as if the vastness of the word had swallowed speech. I asked if any of them had ever said it. By their looks, I understood none of them knew what the others would say, and that no Finn would ever ask this question. But they answered me shyly, each explaining whom she'd said it to, and I knew somehow the word involved the body, that the body was what made it irrevocable. What grief could I have spared if I had faced that choice with the man I loved then? I would have said the word. Knowing the word, I also would have known how to love totally. And he, on the verge of a life with me, would have whispered only some variant of like, and the clarity of like would have set us free. So I'm going to read some poems now in honor of my father. A lot of the poems in this book are, again, my trying to make sense of losing him, and the title poem is actually one of those, so I'll start with that. It's The Glaciers Wake. Toothed snout, blue eye, white-tongued as icy Jove on a god-slow lay, as alive as how I thought my grief should be, a heaving ice field, an evaporating history, onto which, inside the crags of which, I liked my mind to climb. Down where the cold erases the weather's structure, where ice eclipses the too wide sky, I waited in a cell of air for the year to melt each brittle inch into what's green, the growing sea, the wind-scummed water mirror with clouds I read as words from my love dead. By my own heat I melted room to hold my body. I made a god of birds out of the man. Yeah, these are sadder. So let's see. The next one is called Peace Tower. In the year my father died, Yoko Ono built a beam of light on a grass-covered island across a narrow field of ocean from Reykjavik. You should see it. Click this link. See the shape that started as thoughts of a line in Yoko's mind. When Yoko told John her idea for the light, he wanted it to shine up from his yard. So now, in air no one can own, the way no one really owns a tune, a light burns that bullets cannot stop. I'd like to fly to Iceland, take a boat to the beam. I'd like to see every flake of snow set aglow as it fell. Against the aggregate of light, I'd take the hailing bright as mute replies from my beloved dead. Imagine trying to sing to someone through a wall of mud, a mile of sea. John's voice sings across the century, can still be heard in Earth's remotest cities. The plunk of the piano that his fingers traveled over imprinted onto grooves of vinyl over which the needles spiral, so sound spins up into the air. Let the beam spiral off a low cyclonic system, funneling the sky over Iceland. Two opposing forces like the thread down of sound into sense, like the balance of scales of a Libra singing, his voice in key, bending melody. The beam of light is white in the mind, blue in fact. The base of the light is white glass. Heat from the core melts the black sand of Iceland to something smooth, translucent, earth that lets light shine through. In my mind, I see the beam warbling up to the sky. At times the beam is wide, at times it thins, at times it seems to stutter over light-erasing mist. As if light were a held luck, we shine up to the dark, in the winter, under whistling stars. Okay. And this next one is actually for my brother, and when I told my brother that got the book published, I called him up at his office, and he answered the phone, and I said, Damien, I won this book prize. And he goes, oh, the hairs on my arm stood up, and I have tears in my eyes. It was very sweet. So this is for my brother. Let's see. It's on trying to save my niece from grieving. Sorry, this is hard. I'm sorry, Mom. After my father had recovered enough to sit up in his bed, my brother brought Claire in to see him. He was losing the tips of his fingers on his right hand. They were shriveled and black above the knuckles, the rough skin bent at wild angles. As Claire went to him, my father, who could not lift his arms, told her he'd dipped his fingers in blueberries. And I watched Claire measure the lie with a look I have seen my whole life on my brother's face, and in how Claire did not look away from the wounds on my father's hand, but still reached out to take hold of his wrist. I saw my brother, the way he can't help seeing all our flaws, the way he winces, then for our weakness, wills himself to love us again. So. Okay, I'm going to just stay in this elegy just a little longer, and then we'll come out of it. But this is the longest poem in the book. Is called Avalanche, and I'm going to read it actually because I actually quote my father in this poem. He actually is in this poem. I sent him a picture of something I saw, and he, as he would, identified all of the natural elements in it, named all the flowers and everything. So you'll hear his voice in here. So it's called Avalanche. It's quite long, so brace yourselves. Okay. Avalanche. Survivors say the snow goes wild as whitewater, and you swim. When the snow halts, you don't know which way's up, and you cannot move anyway. Not your thumb or your chin, not to blink, not even to fill your lungs. Begin A, begin V, Valenka, Valanga, the word source, lava, Italian for torrent, for gully, for what engulfs us. Years ago, 2 lovers died near Innsbruck, bride and groom on honeymoon from Argentina. Her name was Liliana. We visit her tomb, exquisite as a mosque with point-arched windows, most delicate of all in Recoleta. The guide says Liliana lived a while in India, that her father chose her shroud, a red sari covering her in the coffin in the crypt. I think how she must have loved the feel of the Himalayas underfoot. She named her dog Sabu, a charming village with a small gompa north of Leh in the Nubra Valley, once thought to be under a huge glacier. So I should say I'm doing a lot of quoting, and that's actually a quote from a website. To be under a glacier, to be not under but inside ice. Nubra translation, Ledumra translation, the valley of flowers. Where ice melts back, yellow lilies bloom, hem-stitching the black soil with seeds, and the grass is starred with white anemones, gentling the declivity. The guide says Sabu died too, on the very day, 8,000 miles away in Buenos Aires, as though the dog set off across the mileless white light of a threshold. Now the form they were, but bronze, shadows blooms, presses against the air. Oil dark their sheen pulls heat from snowless skies above Buenos Aires. My father, beside me, names the plants. That tree is not a tree. See how thorn canes wrap the statue's base? Yes, a rose. Rose, rune, cane, thorn. See the purple bud? Yes, dianthus, carnation, coronation, crown. Bloom and thorn over bronze feet, the scorned stalks sway. These are the leaves of a cana lily. Cana means canes, a mat of reeds called Pride of India, or in Thailand, a symbol for Father's Day. O shiny-eyed old man, leaning forward like you've seen stone angels move, is it you or I will go first? How will the earth not shatter by that parting. Snowfields slid and weight-loosed boulders wrecked the air with sound, destroying what had been a sturdy roof, a shield. Then darkness came and stilled the pines, the trills of birds. Hear thunder cease, see snow like silence, suffocate the scene. In seconds, under the perilous slope, by snow, the valley of light went black. I'm going to skip a little bit. Under everything is ocean, under ocean's ore, a sphering, obscuring death. In the seed, in soil, in the seabed, thrust to peaks, in the lush grass, green roll of valleys, there was always the danger of your dying. Who'll cross first? Her body froze in a sudden wall of ice. If not by snow in sleep, in wilderness nearer to the sky and blinding storms, the wall of ice is only death. My father's secret, blood, cancered, starves the body blood should feed. Leuco, white, cell, rooms where monks dwell. The white cells fill with blood, interstice of ice, poesis to make, hyper, over, above, beyond, to step over, cross. Who'll cross first? Song for whom the gods take back. If it's me the statue shadows, it blocks the light and lets me lift my eyes. I've watched my father die. Behold, the valley once was ice, and where we stand was glacier. A past, the weight of years, vanishes here. When clouds break, see what the sun turns blue, and for whom. Some cup a hand over the mouth, exchanging the oxygen of their own breath in the little hand cave until it runs out. Survival depends on the proximity of witnesses. Sometimes the blue the mind can hardly grasp is of our earth delights us. There was always the danger of your dying. Chill the walls in the quiet, swept, where we come to adore the dead. Cornice bricks sift to sand, the angels' hands, the steeped roof tombs under wings of pale brown doves. I will not bury you alive. Outside the walls, crowding the streets, old men are blooming. Under the shade trees they dream, how green and how gentle the grasses. So. Indeed. I'm just going to read one more because I feel like it's kind of heavy to end on that one. So I'm going to read a new one. And this actually I wrote last summer at the Virginia Center for Creative Arts. And we had a super derecho come through. You guys probably had that here too. So. And we lost power for 10 days. So this is the last poem. It's called Apples or Waffles. Were you there for this, David? Oh, okay. Apples or Waffles. You'll know some of the characters in here, though. Okay. On the third night of the power outage, we sat in the living room after dinner, trying to believe, as daylight faded, that the curtains were swaying not because someone knocked them stretching or reaching to the table for more wine, but because of an actual breeze traveling on some repentant front from high up in the Blue Ridge, where it was cold, an efficient breeze that maybe still contained enough coolness to lower the heat by the few degrees that would let us trade our oven-like insomnia for sleep. Then I remembered the election game Amanda taught me, apples or waffles, where everyone votes to save just one, banishing the other option to oblivion. Majority ruled. By clockwork's turns, we'd nominate contenders. In the first round, apples beat waffles 8-3. At apples versus peppercorns, apples won again, 7-4. By round 5, cats arrived and would not be toppled, though the vote was always close. We lost cars, then planes. But the moon tipped the scales, and Aaron nearly left the room as the reigning moon spread its ghost light, exposing otherworldly shadows in a dark and darkening caterwaulousness. Then clothes. Why did we cling to clothes? Beat out the moon. And electricity, since we've been living without it for days. And then clothes fell to music, as they will. And so did sex, which stunned the minority. And then came trees, the trees. 3 days before the lights went out on us at Open Studios, we'd blamed the artists' digital displays. But then we heard trees snap in half and saw by flashlight at the open door, far away, limbs falling fast as leaves, bowing ballerina-like over the yard, blocking the exits with a hero pyre of saplings. A rainless hurricane, it arrived without a warning. All over the property, huge trees blocked the path, green walnuts blackening like hell coins on the ground, the cedars ripped pink pith, exposed and alien in the sun. For 2 days, Aaron cleared debris out of the pool. In the game, trees outlasted the ocean, and trees outlasted words. And Janet noticed every poet there chose trees. When words were gone, we ended the game, and someone muttered, "Trees or sleep," and by then the darkness covered our faces completely, so we couldn't see each other clearly, and we walked out of the house in darkness, under the trees still left, into a world we were now unsure of, its stillnesses unfixed, into a world we could not be sure we hadn't ruined. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming to this. And we're having a party, so go across the hallway and help us celebrate. So thank you all for being here.